Let's go ahead and do number 4. We'll get our XY table ready. And we are also going to go ahead and take this equation and solve for y. You don't have to do this step, but I really like to because it really does simplify the process of plugging in values for x and getting something out for y. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract over x squared to the other side. So I have, let me bring this down a bit. I have 5, I have negative 5 y squared equals negative x squared plus 25. And then I'm going to go ahead and divide each term of my equation by 5, by negative 5, so that I get y squared alone. Negative 5, negative 5, negative 5. Y squared equals negative divided by negative is a positive. So that's x squared divided by 5. Positive 25 divided by negative 5 is going to be negative 5. Okay, now I need to square root both sides. So I have y squared. So I'm going to go ahead and square root that side and square root this side. So I have y equal to plus and minus. So remember, whenever we're squaring root something, we have to consider the positive values and the negative values. Because when I plug in a value for y squared, I could plug in positive 3, that would be 9, and I could plug in negative 3, which is also positive 9 because the negative is being squared. So square root, we're kind of going to leave it like this. X squared divided by 5 minus 5. So this is what we are going to be plugging in values for x. Okay, so I really think that um, Oh, been working on this problem for too long. It's just, I don't know, it's just not working out. And 0 for y.
You can't figure it out? Go check it into Grok.
Okay, so we could keep going on this equation, and we could take the square root of both sides so that we just have y alone. But I decided not to do that because it's a little bit messy, and I think this will be a good point to start plugging in values for x and seeing what we get out for y. So we're going to pick a very easy number to plug in for x so that it comes out even. And that number is 5. And that's because I'm looking at this x. What is a square that's divisible by 5 and comes out evenly? And 25 is a square that's divisible by 5. So let's go ahead and plug in positive 5 for x. So when I plug in 5 for x, then I get 25 divided by 5, which is 5. And then I have 5 minus 5, which is 0. So I get 0 for y. And when I plug in negative 5, I also get a positive 25. So that means I get the same thing when I plug in positive 5 and negative 5. So I'm just going to go ahead and squeeze in negative 5, and I'm going to write comma 5. So this means my first point is negative 5, comma 0, and my second point is positive 5, comma 0. Okay, there are actually no more points that are less than 8, so that fit on our graph, less than negative 8, less than positive 8, that we can plug in for x that'll come out evenly. So in this case, for this problem, I do recommend using a calculator, and this is going to help us compute things a bit easier so we can more estimate our graph and sketch our graph. Okay, so this is just a simple calculator. You don't need anything fancy for this. We just, the numbers don't work out evenly in this case. So we're just going to plug in some numbers and we're going to estimate our points. So if I wanted to plug in 1 for x, that would mean I would square 1. So then I'd have 1/5 minus 5. So I can plug that into my calculator, 1/5 minus 5. Now I get a negative number. To solve for y, I would need to square root both sides, and I can't square root a negative number. So this means that there are no values for y when x is equal to 1. So I'm just going to cross it out. So as you can kind of see that on this graph, no numbers from 0 to 4 are going to work because I'm always going to get a negative number and then I'm going to have to try to square root it, which I can't do. So we now need to pick numbers that are more than the absolute value of negative 5 and 5. So meaning we can pick negative 6 and 6, we can pick negative 7 and 7, we can pick negative 8 and 8. So I'm going to start with 6. So positive 6, I'm going to put it into my formula, my equation here, and 6 squared is 36. So I have 36 divided by 5 so far, and that gives me 7.2. I'm going to go ahead and subtract 5, and that gives me 2.2. Now I need to take the square root of this number. So it's different on every calculator. I know you can't see my buttons very well, but I'm just going to shift and then this one. So this is what I mean by the numbers not coming out very well at all. So I'm actually going to just estimate this number and round it to 1.5. And I have to take the positive value whenever we square root both sides. There's going to be a positive value that works and a negative value that works. So in this case, it's positive this value and negative this value. And we can see that because whatever number I plug into y right here, if I square it, it doesn't matter if it's positive or negative, I'm going to get the same number. It's going to be positive. So I have 2 points from this so far. I have 6 comma 1.5 and 6 comma negative 1.5. Now, what about the situation where we have negative 6? When I toss in negative 6 here, I still get positive 36. So my numbers actually aren't going to change. So I'm writing it like this, but this actually gives me 4 separate points. I have negative 6 comma 1.5, negative 6 comma negative 1.5, and then we have positive 6 comma 1.5 and positive 6 comma negative 1.5. So we get 4 points from just these 4 values right here. So let's go ahead and do 8. So positive 8, I'm going to throw 8 into my equation, and 8 squared is 64. So I have 64, and if you need to review your squares, you could also do 8, and then click the square button, which is right here, and that gives me 64. Now we're going to do 64 divided by 5, and now I need to subtract 5, and I have 7.8. So now I need to take the square root of 7.8, and that is equal to 2.79. And I'm going to estimate it at 2.8. So I have the positive 2.8, and again, I have the negative 2.8 because our y value is squared. And then I need to take the positive case for x and the negative case for x because my x is squared. So from these numbers here, I again get 4 points. All right, this is enough to graph it. So let's go ahead and graph. I have negative 5, comma 0, negative 5, comma 0. And I'm going ahead and graphing positive 5, comma 0. Now I have negative 6, comma 1.5. So negative 6, 1.5. And I'm going to go ahead and graph the mirror image of that because that's easiest for me to think of right now. So positive 6, comma 1.5. And now I'm going to do negative. Negative 6, negative 1.5. Negative 6, negative 1.5. Positive 6, negative 1.5. Okay, now let's graph these 4 points right here. Negative 8, 2.8. Negative 8, 2.8, which is pretty close to 3. And then negative 8, negative 2.8, negative 8, really close to 3. And then I have positive 8, positive 2.8. And then negative 8, negative 2.8. Okay, now I can go ahead and graph this. So let's just connect the dots and put arrows on our line. Something like that. So that is what my graph looks like. All right, so now let's go ahead and do number 5. So I have my XY table over here. And I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. I'm going to solve for y squared. So I'm going to subtract over 3x squared. And I get negative y squared equals negative 3x squared minus, plus 6. Caught myself there. Now I'm going to go ahead and divide by negative each term. y squared equals positive 3x squared minus 6. Okay, so I want to put in a value. Okay, so let's go ahead and put in 0 and just see what we get. I'm going to plug in 0 for x. I get 3 times 0 equals 0. Then I get negative 6. Then I'm going to try to square root it, which is not going to work. Okay, so I need to find, so that's not going to work. I need to find the value that's going to be working out good. So I need a positive value that I can square root. And it would be nice if it came out even. So, hmm, um, what would I need to input for x to get this entire thing equal to 0? So I'm just going to take this and I'm going to solve for 0 just to see what that would be. So 3x squared minus 6 equals 0. Okay, let's see. We have 3x squared equals 6, and then divide by 3. So x squared equals 2, and then x equals positive and negative root 2. Okay, I can actually plug this value in because I have my calculator. So I have no idea what root 2 is. I don't have, that's not a square, so it doesn't come out even. So let's go ahead and find that out. So I have 2 and take the square root, and I get it's about 1.4. Okay, so let's say I plug in 1.4 to this. So I'm going to take root 2, plug it in, square it, it becomes 2. 3 times 2 is 6. 6 minus 6 is 0. So if I plug in positive 1.4, I get 0 for y. Now, what if I were to plug in negative root 2? So remember, my negative is outside the square root, so that's perfectly fine. We don't want any negatives inside the square root. That is not defined. But we can have a positive outside the square root. So I could also plug in negative 1.4. And guess what? I'm still going to get 0 because that negative is going to be squared and I'm going to be left with a positive 2. So I've got 2 points just from that one thing right there. Okay, now I'm just going to need to plug something in. So remember, if I plug in 1, that's not going to work because that's going to give me a negative value. And I can't square root a negative value. So let's go ahead and plug in something more than 1.4. And how about 2? 2 sounds like a good starting point. So if I take 2 and I'm going to plug it into my equation, so 2 squared is 4. 4 times 3 is 12. 12 minus 6 is 6. That was pretty good. That came out even. Okay, so guess what? I can do the same thing with negative 2. And what value am I going to get? That's right, I'm going to get 6. But I'm not, oh, wait. So plug in 2, I get 4, and 4 times 3 is 12. 12 minus 6 is 6. But wait, there's more. I have to square root that 6. So let's type in 6 to my calculator, take the square root of it, and I get 2.4. So my value is actually 2.4. But wait, there's more because I'm taking the square root of both sides of my equation to solve. That means I have to count for the positive and the negative value. Okay, so just like before, I have 4 points from these 4 values and the different combinations of each. Okay, great. This is looking good. So I know what happens pretty close to this area, but I want to figure out what happens out here. So let's go ahead and plug in 7. Why not? And 7 squared is 49. 49 times 3 is 147 minus 6, and then we're going to take the square root. And I'm a little worried. It's more than 8, so that's going to be off our graph. So that's probably not a good value to choose. So actually, I'm going to choose 6. Let's see if 6 will work. 6 squared is 36. 36 times 3 is 108. Minus 6 is 102. And let's take the square root. Ah, that's more than 8 as well. And I really want to keep it on my graph. So I'm actually not going to use 6. We'll try 5. 5 squared is 25. 25 times 3, think in quarters. So that gives me 75. 75 minus 6 is 69, right? 75 minus 6 is 69. So let's go ahead and take the square root of this and see what we get. Square root 8.3. Hey, let's work with that. I think that's a good starting point here. So 8.3. So I have to take the positive case and the negative case. But wait, there's more because I'm plugging into x squared. So the same positive value is going to give me the negative value is going to give me exactly what the positive value gave me. So I have negative 5. All right, so now I have 4, 8, 10 points. Let's go ahead and graph all of these onto our graph. Okay, I have negative 1.4 and positive 1.4, comma 0. So 1.4, comma 0, negative 1.4, comma 0. Looks great. So now I have negative 2, comma 2.4. Negative 2, comma 2.4. And then the negative, negative, negative. Okay. And then I have positive 2, positive 2.4, positive 2, positive 2.4, and then the negative. All right, looks good. Now I have negative 5, 8.3. Negative 5. 8 and a little off. Because it's not 8, it's 8 point something, 8.3-ish. And again, we're just estimating here. Okay, and then 5, positive 5, 8.3, negative 8.3. All right, let's connect the dots and see what we've got. Okay, that looks good. Okay, looks great. All right, let's do the other side. Okay, that looks great. So that is all that for that problem, and we're going to go on to the next one. Okay, make our XY table. I know I'm going to need to plug in some points here. And then ooh, look, it's already solved for y squared. That's exactly what I like. So I have y squared equals, and I just like to rewrite it. You don't have to do this step, but I like to because I like my y value on this side of the equation, and I like all my x's on this side of the equation. So I have 5x squared minus 25. Okay, so I am kind of seeing that 0, right? So I want to know where y is 0. So if I take this and set it equal to 0, it will tell me what x value I need to plug in to get 0. So I have 5x squared minus 25 equals 0. 5x squared equals 25. And then x squared equals 5, right? I'm just going faster. I'm doing this all in my head. This is divide by 5, right? And now I need to take the square root of both sides. So x equals plus minus root 5, which is approximately, let's take the square root of plus minus root 5. So 2.2. So I'm just gonna, there's lots of different ways to round, but just when we're estimating, we're kind of graphing, we don't really need to get into the littler numbers. We just want to cut it off and just say, hey, pretty close to 2.2, plus and minus. So I can write plus minus 2.2, and that will get me y for 0. If you need to visualize it, we're plugging in root 5. Root 5 squared, doesn't matter if it's plus or minus, it's going to be positive 25. Sorry, root 5 plugged in, doesn't matter if it's positive or negative, it's going to be positive 5. And then 5 times 5 is 25. 25 minus 25 is 0. So that gives me 2 points right there. Okay, let's get another point somewhere. So we need to go above 2.2 so that we don't have any negative numbers that we don't have to square root. So let's go, let's try 4. So I'm going to plug in 4. 4 squared is 16. 5 times 16. And remember, I can plug in plus and minus 4. 16. So 5 times 16 is 80. 80 minus 25 is 55. And then I need to square root that number. And that gives me 7.4. And remember, it gives me plus minus 7.4 because I did square root. If I'm going to plug this value in for y, it doesn't matter if it's positive or negative, it will give me the same thing. So I can put that plus minus there too. And remember, that's going to give me 4 points right there. Okay, so let's plug in another number, and we don't want to go too high. This is going to be way more than 8. So let's do 5. We could do 3, but I just think 2.2 is going to be pretty close to 3, so I kind of want to do a bigger number. I'm going to plug in plus minus 5. That's going to give me 25, positive 25. 25 times 5, thinking quarters, it's going to be 125. 125 minus 25. Hey, that works out pretty even. That's 100. Square root 100, that's going to give me 10. So I have plus minus 10. So I know that's off my chart, but I just think that if I did 3, it would just be too close. So that's what I'm going to go with. I'll just estimate it off the chart. It's fine. Okay, so I have 2.2, comma 0. Negative 2.2, comma 0. And then let's go ahead and do our positive 4, positive 7.4. And the negative case. And the negative x value with positive and negative. And it is a mirror image, so you can always estimate by that. And then positive negative 5, positive negative 10. So I know I'm going to need to just make my own lines there just to estimate it. Remember, we're just sketching. I know in math we like to be very exact, but sometimes it's helpful just to sketch it and get an idea. So there's one. Trying to make my line as curvy and smooth as possible. because it looks nicer. All right, and that's it. So I really hope that you had fun graphing these. These take a lot of work. We're really getting to that point in Algebra 2 where we're really thinking and solving a lot of numbers. The numbers aren't coming out nice anymore. And Matthew C does a really great job of really getting numbers that often come out very nice for us. And these just don't come out nice. So I think they really did try hard, but just these types of graphs, you can't really have them come out nice. So it's really invaluable to have a calculator. There really is, without a table or chart, no way to really estimate the square root of these numbers, of prime numbers especially. So it's very helpful to have a calculator to do those calculations for you. All right, that is it. And I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.